Hello and welcome everybody this evening to Finding Voices Radio. We of course are Freedom Central, coming to you live from the Netherlands. The local time here is 7 p.m. on the 30th of September 2012. My name as always is Mel V and I'll be your host for the next few hours. And of course, dealing with all things technical and manning the chat forum is my wonderful beloved partner Richard.
Welcome everybody to the show.
For those of you who are new to our show, welcome, and please feel free to catch up on our previous work, which of course is all archived on our website, freedomcentral.info. Tonight is the last Sunday night of September, and as September is Child Abuse Awareness Month, I decided to dedicate the last show of September to the victims and survivors of child abuse. The group that I have joining us today are rather special. It's a couple of ladies who are folks who were strong in the movement, but unfortunately they've been shattered and dispersed, and there are many elements which have just scattered to the four winds. And I've been learning how many strong, committed groups have been broken up by the various co-opted elements of the truth movement, such as the Holy Grail campaign, stroke hoax, and various charities that surround these sort of pseudo psyops type campaigns, such as Truth and Hope, which of course we will discuss tonight. Many of you may be aware that Freedom Central has often done shows where we expose the control opposition, and I discuss the evidence as well as take other people's studied opinions into account. All too often, it is the people who are the most vulnerable who are affected by these self-invested elements of any justice campaign. And tonight, we have a group of ladies, or should I say two of them, because not all of them could join us, who will be speaking to us about abuse, about their experiences, and the neglect at the hands of not only the system, but those who profit off the false mantra of being helpers of these survivors and of the desperate, the suffering and the oppressed, when to be honest with you, they're quite the opposite. So tonight I've got Louise and Shiva joining us. Let me just pop on over to the Skype and see if they are there. Ladies, are you there?
Yes.
Hello, that's Louise.
And yes.
Hello, Shiva. All right, ladies. Your voices are both very distinctive, so I think you can just speak freely without having to say who you are when you want to speak up. Firstly, of course, you ladies contacted me. Shiva, you contacted me. I think let's start with the reasons why you did that.
Well, a few days ago, I was actually quite distressed. I think it was about Wednesday morning, and I was feeling very guilty because I was just popping onto the rally group occasionally just to check in and see how it was going, and finding that, and this will probably unravel as we talk, but I couldn't really fully get behind it, and I couldn't publicise it. Through different accounts that I have, I'm in touch with a lot of very major sites that have been working solidly for 20 and 30 years on this subject, and none of them knew even that the rally was existing. And the March part only was publicised about a week before. And again, I just sort of looked for it on sites that for the last 16 years have been promoting this thing, even while I was missing, because I began it in 93, I ran it in 94 as well, and then I dropped away. 2009 I came back to, I came online for the first time, and then I found out that the rally and march was still going on. I was really excited.
Sorry, can I just say this is the rally for child abuse awareness?
Yes, child abuse awareness, and the dream was that if we talked about it enough and explained enough, that not only would adult survivors get the help they needed, but that we would somehow manage to stop it, because at that time, back in the early 90s, nobody was really talking about it. I was involved at that time with groups, but it was all very secret. There was a sort of hidden network of people, and I just said, it's a bit like slavery. We're going to have to be the ones to break silence, to make this change. And that was the only thing I could think of doing at the time, was that we have to raise up our heads and show the world that there's actually nothing wrong with us. We're all kinds of people. We come from all kinds of black backgrounds, and that this terrible thing has happened to us. It's not our fault. It's not our shame to carry. We can hold our heads high and show ourselves in public, talk about it. Those that are ready to, that can, please come out with me onto the street. Let's show the enormity of this. And in fact, that very first rally was really amazing. There were around 1,500 people in the square, and I didn't say very much, but one of the things I did do was that I asked people, if you've been abused or you know somebody that has, put your hand up. And everybody in the square that day put their hand up. And then I said, well, if you know 3 or 4 people that have been abused, keep your hand up. And then I went into the hundreds, and there were still hands up. And then I said, even 1,000 or more, because I'm talking now to the helplines. And there were helplines then. And we were all inundated. Any time that there was any group around sexual abuse, we got inundated. None of us could cope with it all. So there were still hands up. And the amazing thing for me was that afterwards, the police chief that had been sort of at the head of organising the police part of helping us and supporting us, he came up and he said, and in those days I was known as Sue Melrose, he said, Sue, this is one of the most, I can't think of the word, but, he was telling me that he felt honoured to be alongside us. And he said, we didn't have to do anything because it's been so peaceful. And he said, most of my men have actually spent the afternoon in the bus because they had nothing to do. And then he said, but it wasn't only that. They were actually bawling their eyes out, most of them. They had no idea. But when you got people raising their hands, and we suddenly saw the enormity. Now, I know that some of those police went on to create things like CEOP and things that did then start to create change. Now, we know it's not all good. We know lots has gone wrong, but it started things happening. And certainly if you get involved in looking at the major sites, which you won't see represented at the rallies today, but sites like NAPAC, even Into the Light, that is a supporter of the rally now, they all started back in 93, 94 as groups that congregated, concretised and got stronger, because now survivors were dropping off that shame, talking more, joining up more. So it had a very creative ripple effect. But when I came back in 2009, one of the first things that happened was somebody handed me a piece of paper and said, that's our chance. And I said, you're joking? Who tells us what to chant? This is about us saying whatever we like today. That was the point. This is the day, and the way I promoted it back in the early days was that we're just going to have a mic there, and you can say whatever you like, and instead of being shunned, you will be applauded. And so much healing came from that. You could feel it, and you could see it. And that was what I came back, after seeing 2009, how it had become controlled and small. I wanted to re-inject that freedom, that spontaneity, that creativity. And in fact, that happened. There were hundreds of people there that had their poems ready, their songs ready, and they were just turned away because by that time, it just progressed into that I was suddenly told that we've got speakers coming and we need half an hour for Brian Gerrish, we need half an hour for Robert Greene, we need half an hour for David Icke, and by the way, there's a healer coming to give a mass healing and that's going to take another half an hour. And so we've got 2 hours taken up by people I didn't even know. I knew of them vaguely, but I had a bit of a hands-off with all of them. Not sure, because I was already engaging with the deeper, and I would say the real, survivor movement. And certainly at that time, people like NAPAC had the rally, and they were promoting it. They were happy to. And they were very pleased that I was back on board, because they knew me. I'm running out of steam.
It's all right. Take your time.
Yeah, but that's sort of very briefly, I guess,
all right.
history.
All right, so basically, just to sum it all up, you were an avid supporter. The movement you were creating back in '93 was very big. It was gaining momentum, and it started to cool down. And you noticed with that came a lot of big names who seemed to usurp and take over this thing that had really began to gain momentum. And to be honest with you, this is something we're seeing, and it's historical. To be honest with you, even the women's rights movement was completely, in the end, co-opted. But the thing is that all these freedom movements, all these well-intended things are eventually taken over before they actually have any impact to change anything. And this is how, I guess, you've come to know of my work, is because I've been exposing a lot of this co-opted information. Now, to the outside world who knows nothing about conspiracy, trying to explain to them the subtle layers of the controlled opposition. It's the people who oppose what's going on, but actually they're controlled by the very people that they answer to. You try to explain that to someone who doesn't get anything at all, and it's a tough sell. But to be honest with you, this is what's going on, and we would be a fool to think that the control system that controls absolutely everything hasn't somehow got some way of controlling uprisings, which are very powerful. And particularly amongst people who have suffered, there is a passion and there is a motivation that you possibly, it can absolutely start a revolution if it's not controlled and quelled. And I guess this is possibly where you have found yourself now. Am I not correct?
It is, but it happened before. Very quickly after the '93 rally, the whole thing was filmed by the BBC, and they were going to be making a documentary showing as much of the rally as they could, and they were very committed. The film crew were fantastic, and they were concerned. I mean, not everybody felt like they wanted to be filmed, so we worked it all out. Sort of thinking on our feet. We were sort of telling people, well, just put your hand up if you don't want to be filmed. And the camera crew promised that they would drop the camera so that they wouldn't film those people. And we promised them that afterwards we wouldn't be just airing everybody that had spoken. We would be seeking their permission. We really tried to make it safe as possible. And the crew were marvellous. Now, apparently afterwards, they were told it could not be shown, and the crew threatened to walk out unless it was shown. But so indeed, there are some clips, and I do have the footage on old VHS videos, and I'm over the next week or so going to get this all pulled out and online with some help, because I'm just not very good with technicalities.
I know how you feel.
I'm gonna get this stuff and I'm gonna air it, because it does tell this story. That then what happened, you see, false memory syndrome suddenly became an issue, and so I was invited to go on to Kilroy and other programs, but it all switched into being about false memory syndrome. So this came in really quickly. So for me, looking back, it's like suddenly we're shouting, we're loud, we're noisy, we're demanding change, and they've got an excuse to tell us that we're all mad, bad and crazy. You know?
Yeah.
And not worth listening to, because we've probably made it up, and if we didn't make it up, then the therapist has got us to think this. And I went on Sky News at one point, up against a therapist who was saying about post-memory syndrome, and she was saying there's all these therapists telling these people that they've got these memories, and I said, well, where are they? Because I know from being me trying to get help and talking to other survivors, we can't find therapists that will even talk to us. They don't know what to do with us. They're turning us away. So where are these therapists that are actually going to not only listen to us, but encourage us to have these false memories? I've never met them. And that was kind of how it was. It was very crazy back then. And later on, we do find out that there was the paedophile information exchange. And again, I've got footage, and there is footage out online, if we can pull it together, that proves that our government, both parties, had people that were up very close and personal with the paedophile information exchange. And the MPs brush it aside and say, well, nobody knew in those days how much harm it did. What? When did anybody think it was okay to abuse or rape a child and that it wouldn't do any harm? And we hear the same from the Catholic priests and Pope. You know, anybody that we've managed to gain momentum, and there are massive, huge groups with millions of supporters working on this because they've just remained strong and gathered together. They will not come to this rally now as it is now, because it's been infiltrated again and taken over. And this is where I'm not prepared to say that Holly Gregg's story is necessarily untrue. I really don't know. And but what I do know is that what the campaign has done. They managed to viralise Holly Gregg, and then they managed to attract thousands and hundreds of thousands of people the world over. And I helped them to do that, actually. I helped them in quite a big way.
So did I.
I helped them because I was promoting their groups alongside all of the other groups that are involved in bringing light to sexual abuse. And now, looking back, it's they going into their groups, which I did do sometimes, and I'd say something, and I'd put Cross of Change in there and tell them what we were doing, and that there were many other groups working on this, and they would shut it down each time. They did not want me talking in their group about any other case. And I know that this has happened to lots of people, that we had to focus on one case only, and that was Holly Gregg, because if that case was broken, all cases would be broken. And I did argue back then with quite a few of the central characters that I didn't think they were right. But that's what they were doing, and so, you know, I'm not the police force of the child survivor movement. But what I've seen has happened is that they've sucked up so much energy that could have been spread to raise the awareness in a much broader way for everybody, which was what I attempted in the early days. Again, going back to the 90s, the most bullying I got when I was doing the first rally was from women's groups that didn't want men there. They were telling me that all men were potential abusers and shouldn't be allowed. And I said, well, I don't think so. I think that men are being abused too, and we need to hear them. I also want my sons to hear this stuff. I want them to know what's going on. I want them protected, and I also want them to be aware of what abuse is, and so that they're functioning, healthy males when they grow up. I want I had lots of friends coming that wanted their partners alongside them that were men, and I wanted them to be able to have that. So I absolutely had to hold that position, and I got a lot of bullying, but at that time we didn't have the internet, so it was only on my phone, and I could control it. And my mantra became, I'm controlling it so nobody else can. And I did try to maintain that, and I did maintain it with 2010 until the final week, and as you see, it just scattered and I fell apart, and I just let them take over. I couldn't help it.
Well, unfortunately, what they do.
That's making sense.
Yeah, they do have this strategy of wearing people down, and it's becoming something a pattern I'm recognizing over and over again on various forums, which is one of the reasons why I don't contribute to any of these groups anymore. I learned this. I haven't contributed to any other groups in a major way, apart from the ones that I know are very well controlled by nice individuals. Okay, Shiva, just a moment. Let's go over to Louise. Hi, Louise. You're still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, Louise. Okay, you've obviously now part of this regrouped effort of victims and survivors of child abuse. You've come along, obviously, to speak to us as well about some of the things you've experienced. First off, before we get into your personal experience, I wanted to ask you, having listened to what Shiva said and knowing obviously what we've spoken about, have you witnessed the similar thing with movements being co-opted and infiltrated?
Yes, but I'd say that yes, that's how the matrix in a sense works, that every aspect is controlled and manipulated, and so it's no surprise that child abuse is another area. I wasn't aware of all what Shiva just said of the history or herstory, whichever way, of what went before, because I was never part of the child abuse movement or anti-abuse movement. I worked in the drugs field, and then I came across the child abuse, but I came in right at the depth of it, because I came across a child that I had to help fight with the mother to revoke care orders on. And she was being abused in care and being programmed in care, and they had the care order, and until it was revoked, and not much of that truth came out, other than I found a lot of resistance from the care profession, and all parts of every aspect of society that I went to for help were obstructed, which I wasn't used to. Now, when you're looking at what Shiva's just said, that case that I fought for the child was from 99 till 2000, but then through saving that child, I had to actually educate the child and so forth. And it wasn't until 2009, which is what she was talking of, that I came to a place where I was deprogramming a child from mind control and also helping the mother. And then we found children that she'd had, which she wasn't aware she'd had. And so I was going, then we had to come away from every part of the establishment to survive, because we were being gang stalked and so forth from every angle. Occult practices were obviously going on. And so we didn't have no part of society really, but then what happened is I came in through the mind control aspect. And so I went to the first conference that we had in Britain on mind control, run by the Bowlby Centre, which is part of the Tavistock, which is part of the Controllers of the World Business. So, but it was the first conference, so I went to it, and it was run by them, and so I think it's called DID, I don't know what it is, it's Health Service, also run it with them. And that's run by Valerie Simpson, who's quite well known in that aspect. Anyway, I went there, and through finding the children, and they were in other countries, I had to look at or how could we bring in the daughter that wanted to come in? And we thought, well, if you can prove that she's your mother, then with DNA test we'd be all right. But seeing as I'd received so much resistance in the system, I knew that my testing of the child would be no use because they'd say I cheated. So I went and had to go and ask someone in the system. So after going to the conference on mind control and satanic ritual abuse that was held here in 2009, Britain, I assessed everyone there in my mind, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to go to Valerie Simpson. So I went to her, and she was very welcoming and said she would help me, but she didn't actually help me. But that's another story, although it isn't. It's all part of the same big package. And basically, after that, the mother I was in a relationship with by this time, we'd been together for 10 years at that point, 2009. And so things started breaking down. And now, in retrospect, I think she was being accessed to break it down. But also, in the spring of 2010, which is very relevant because it was when they were trying their hardest to separate two of us, but we were tight. Emma, who runs Truth and Hope, approached me on Facebook. And I was on Facebook because that's where I was searching for the children of the mother, because that was how I found a way to find them. And it was when I found a child of hers that really sort of blew her mind, which all blew her mind, but this was really mind-blowing stuff. She didn't want to look no more, so I was left with, well, what shall I do with my time? Because I was very stuck, because she was doing all the deprogramming, I was looking after the children, so forth, so forth. So so I went online, and then all of a sudden I used to just search in Google mind control, and there wasn't much around then really in 2010. At the beginning there wasn't much. It's in recent years that it's all sort of escalated and everyone's looking for butterflies. But back then there wasn't much, and so in Facebook, because it was like, why do I want to be on Facebook then? It's all just everyone saying hello honey, and I'm not on that tip. So I just typed in mind control and paedophiles, and I found a group that had been set up by Emma, who runs Truth and Hope, and it was something like the British Establishment, I don't know, Shiva will know the name of it, but I don't remember the name. So anyway, it was about the pedos in the British establishment, so I was so shocked to see it on Facebook where they all say hello honey, and so I joined, and then I wrote, oh, thank you Lord for this group, because I'd never knew anyone in Britain that talked about mind control and all what I was aware of. So I was really grateful. But then some man who's friends with Margaret, oh golly, it's a minister, it's one of our, so out of the system, Margaret Hodges, I think she was a children's minister. So I checked this man, and he sent a private message saying, shut up about religion, that's the cause of all this. And then so I turned to my partner then, we were in conflict, but we weren't that day, and I said, the man's telling me shut up. And so she said, no, you don't shut up, but he'll tell you when to shut up, so I'll go tell him that. So I just went back to the group and said, some man's wrote me private to tell me to shut up. And he actually lived in the next borough to where we lived in London. And as I say, was friends with Margaret Hodges. So then Truth and Hope, or Emma, came and said, no, you say what you want on the group, so I did. Well, then she wrote to me privately and said, hi, la, 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 how do I know her name? I didn't know her name, I wrote but I'm dyslexic, so it had no R in it. So anyway, she telling me, her name is Emma Louise Clark, and that's my name, Louise Clark. So it's like, so she said, and you're born in you're Aquarian, if that's correct, if you're not lying. So I said, yeah, I am. So she said, so am I. Right, so okay. So my partner at the time was like, don't trust her, because she's got a same name as you, never trust them situations, which yes, these people play with names, it's all numerology and all that shit. So anyway, but she seemed sincere, so she was saying, we're having a rally, I'm arranging a rally with someone who'd known it for 10, 15 years, something like that, and then that was Shiva. But I had met Shiva in that group, I think, or in Costa, I don't know, somehow I knew her too at that time, but nothing, it was all, I was an outsider. And then she was writing to me now in retrospect. She's writing saying, oh, come to the rally. And I said, no, I can't come to the rally. I'm protecting the children because I saved a child from them. I don't think I can go and stand there. I had written about it online, but under a different name. But I didn't feel I could go and stand in Trafalgar Square when I'm trying to protect the children, and it took 2.5 years to fight, and they were hounding us. So she says, oh, no, you can disguise yourself. I thought, but they're not going to be, they're going to know that's me. So, anyways, I said, no, I can't come. And then that year, a few weeks later, they managed to separate me from the mother and blew my world apart. But in that process, then she didn't contact me no more, which I didn't think nothing of, but I was just, travelling all over the place to try and put my brain back together of what had just happened. But she then, a week before the rally in 2010, even though I could have gone there because I no longer was protecting the children, I was in Wales in the mountains. So she contacted me and said, oh, are you coming to the rally? So I said, well, no, I'm in the mountains. And so she told me, oh, she changed in the last week. Why has she turned and changed? So she was spreading like, oh, Shiva's done wrong. So I said, oh, I don't know, maybe, she's switched daughter or something. I don't know. I'll try and see it from my world. So anyway, that was that. She'd now and then like, oh, where are you? But then as things progress, I see, no, she's being manipulated and used, and she could get all the blame, but I feel, no, it's not her to blame. Someone's handling her from higher. So, that I can see now that Shiva's history links onto my history, but I didn't know this till I've just heard it just now. So that's quite interesting that it links on. And then I went there in 2011 to the rally, and I spoke out, but the footage, no one filmed it, apparently. Well, then she did, and when the next day came, she put up Ryan Garish, and so, which is fine, or that ain't, well, whatever. So she put him, so I said, oh, you're going to put up the footage of me? Because I risked myself to stand there and say exactly how he say the bits that he won't say, and I said it very clearly. So I felt, well, if I'm risking it, you should, So she said, oh, it's a volunteer that does it, so, it'll take time. So I said, okay. So a few months passed, and I wrote to her and said, where's the footage? She said, oh, it's a volunteer, it takes time. And then a few more months went, and she wrote to me and said, oh, my Apple Mac's gone wrong, and but when it's right, the footage is in there, I'm going to edit it. So I said, oh, yeah, that'd be nice. But I'd lost hope by then. And then around June, which was a year later, I wrote to her and said, what happened to the footage? And then I didn't hear from her, so I phoned her and said, what happened to it? She said, oh, it got contaminated. So that was all right. So that's so it was like, well, why am I going this year to pretend that the cause is fighting against the parts that I have to fight against? And at the end of the day, I'm very much aware of satanic ritual abuse going on and government mind control going on. And if I don't speak out, then it's not being spoken about. And people, they can do it. Like I've said on a video I made a couple of days ago, because I, like Shiva, was like, oh, I want to go to the rally, I want to show that I support, but it's not going to work. So I thought I'll make my own video. So that's why I made a video and said exactly what was going on. So yes, you could say, oh, well, like they probably do to her. Well, if we let if we talk about them things, we won't be able to be a charity because the government won't fund that. So we have to, but at least if we do it this way, we'll be helping so many children that are being abused. I can see the way they're twisted. So it's like, but yes, I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, you both are people who have been in situations where you've experienced it directly or indirectly, abuse, which comes in many forms. And basically, the people who are now heading up the various awareness campaigns around abuse, you don't reckon they're actually in it for the right reasons, or they're perhaps doing the actual movement a disservice?
I think many. You see, this is where you get confused because, I'm not you confused. I get confused because their hearts look like they're in it, yeah. But it's like through experiencing social services come in and behaving very unusual. And from seeing that, you learn that these people can really, in the right order, can really fake sincerity very well. So it's like, so from that experience, then I look at them and I think, you do feel sincere, but I know that you can fake sincere. So firstly, they do feel sincere, but when I see the conduct, it's like, no, that's not sincere. That I can see the agenda, because yes, I am familiar with the agendas, because even though I'm from the drugs field, every field is run the same, with the same way of manipulation. So when I first came into the situation in 2010, because I was bored and looking and found the group, and then I found the Holly Greg site, and then it was like, wow, someone's got through. Look, we can't get nowhere. We can't even get justice. And so I'd even told the child that I saved from them, like, oh, there's a child, and she said, she's saying exactly what you're saying and what's going on, and well, they can't say she's a liar because she's got Down syndrome, and so, the child, yeah, so we were like, yeah. So I was really supportive to the Holly Greg campaign too, and was like, yes, do you know what I mean? Yes, I support it. Wow, you're saying what I know, so it was, I can see how all the little dots join together, really. So whether you're looking at the people, you say, then I think very much it's orchestrated. And I think whether they are handled or whether they are handlers, they're all handled by someone, whether it's, through many means we can handle other people. So it's like myself, I'm very outspoken, and I will say exactly what is, and that's how I am. And what I find on the internet is nearly everything that I say is hidden. And you could Google it till you blue in the face, you wouldn't find it, because it's hidden. And then there's certain things that I say, like I exposed, and I uploaded the letters that I wrote to Tony Blair in I5 and David Blunkett, and I uploaded their responses. And they're not hidden. And I do see it and think, why haven't you hidden them? What is it that you want? Because it's manipulation, you see what I mean, even from afar. So everything is manipulated. They allow Holly Greg to come through, and I could see that it was orchestrated. I could see that it's like, this don't all tally. It don't tally. There's something not right. And when I went, there was some campaign. I don't know. I don't stick into all of this much. I write my own truth. But there was some campaign where it was Bill Maloney and Robert Greene and I can't think of his name. Another guy who ran the site where he said where all the pedophiles are, and they was on some list voting for who's the top something. I can't remember. Shiva or now maybe. And anyway, they got slung off the list, I think. And it was to do with Esther Ransom, who's just she does things here. Anyway, so they got stuck to this, so they made a video documenting Bill Maloney, and so I went to that, and we, I can't even remember what it was all about, but anyway, I went to that and I spoke on that, and then that video he took it private, so that wasn't no longer available. But what's my point? I've lost my point. Yes, there they was very much pushing Holly Greg, and then Robert Greene was saying, I met him, and he was like, they really asked him on the camera, something, and he was going, oh yeah, well now we are speaking, everyone, this will encourage others to come forward because they know that we'll look out for, and I'm thinking, what are you talking about? And there's even photos of me taken by Ian someone, I don't know his name.
Ian McFerrin.
With me standing there looking at Robert Greene, and people who know me are like, why are you looking at him like, what? But it was like, what are you talking about? You're going to protect, well, who's protecting? No one's protecting me, right? So it was like, what is this twaddle? But they never used that footage.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
It's like, didn't tally, it didn't add up. Yes, it doesn't tally, so you know it's orchestrated, so you have to look at, well, what is it orchestrated to achieve? Do you know what I mean? And I feel with the powers that be, if they can't stop people talking. So what they do is steer them in a direction that suits them best. And so you can see that with this, they've steered it down. They've steered Holly Gregg's case down a road, and then they've shattered that by putting them all against each other, all the people that started the campaign. And then with the child abuse rally, they've took it from Shiva and steered it down the road to charity, and then you can't go to charities for help because they're run by government. So you can't do. So yes, you can see that the people in place are controlled in that place, and some may be fully aware of what they're doing, and some may not be aware of what they're being used to do. And that's what I see it as. And I sit there here to try and work out, do you know what you're doing, or do you... But that's just me, but I don't know. You can never know that, well, you can know if you get inside information, but I don't have inside information. I can't say I know. I can only sense and feel. But I know it's orchestrated. I can see that. It's clear. You can sort of predict the path that everything's going to go down.
Absolutely. I think it's most obvious is we can all now see the patterns, but the other thing which I think is really, really obvious is just how desperate, and it's becoming more and more obvious, how desperate they are to cover up this sort of underlying disease in society, which seems to be paedophilia, and which seems to be infecting normal people. And I mean, just to think of, I can't think of anything worse than preying on my own child sexually, and I just don't understand how people can have that normal inclination unless they're infected by it from somewhere, be it they were abused by a priest or a parent or somebody. And now that's got to precipitate from somewhere, because that surely can't be something that's naturally or inherently in us to behave in that disgusting manner. What do you think, Shiva?
Well, I agree completely, because I couldn't find it in me. I've got 3 boys, and little boys, well, all my sons have gone through a phase where they are absolutely in love with me, and I've been tickling them, and I can remember my oldest boy actually putting my hand there, just in playfulness and total innocence. He may have been 3, but I moved it away.
Yeah.
And I tickled him somewhere else, because I know better. As he was older, even as a teen, sometimes he would like to sit and have me, give him a massage, or, stroke his back or something. But there were times when I might be sort of doing that for him. He'd be sitting in front of me and would be watching TV together, but there might be something on TV and it was becoming a little bit sexual, couple in bed or something, and I would just gently back off, because at that point I thought, he could get some kind of feeling from what he's seeing, and I don't want it attached to my touching him. Now, that's the opposite of how a paedophile operates. They would guide children down to that road and completely know what they're doing and take advantage. Just as I could see those signs and move back, they move forward. And paedophiles just have a different... I stopped asking why a long time ago. I can remember years of why are they like this? Why did this happen? And in the end, I just got sick of it, because we were all sitting in these tiny rooms in little cramped women's centres or wherever we could find to talk, and it was all so secret, and it was so, and I just said, look, hang on a minute, they're not going to break silence. No, there is this ceiling that we can't break through, and that's why I brought it onto the street. And as we were marching down Park Lane that day back in '93, which you can see on my wall, and it was humongous, it was noisy, it was no holds barred, and we had cars driving towards us, and men were going bright red, and you could see the rage in some of those drivers that were suddenly seeing our placards and our signs, but I didn't control that part. When I say I controlled it so nobody could, it was so that it was facilitated for everybody. So there were all kinds of signs, and I didn't necessarily agree with them all, or like them all. It didn't matter, because it wasn't about me, it was about all of us from wherever we were, telling our truth for once. And I'm just now looking at the first video I found of the rally. I posted it to you now.
Yes, yeah.
And while Lou's been talking, I've been watching it silently. So I'm not hearing the voices. But do you know what the first thing you see on the video? Robert Greene.
Yeah.
Then you see Holly Gregg. Google Holly Gregg. Well, I don't need to Google Holly Gregg. I think anybody that's in the child abuse groups on Facebook, we all know about Holly Gregg. We don't need to be educated about any more of it. Why is that the first one up?
Yeah.
I would rather hear from the stories we haven't heard yet. There are plenty of them out there, because I hear them all the time. And that was what I wanted to facilitate, all of those hidden stories that are still happening today. And I have been heartbroken to come back to it and to see it controlled. And then when I decided to take it back on and inject the energy, one of the people that had been involved told me that it was safe until I got back, because my friend posted all of their speeches after the 2009 rally, and she got attacked, she got threatened with legal action, and this was by Steve Bevan, who is, I think he runs SOSA, which is it seems to be a very good site. I can't really tell because it is for men, and I'm not a man, but it looks good, and I've certainly seen other survivors and other survivor groups that have said that they got a lot out of working with him. So there's clearly good stuff going on. But I guess, again, if you look at the side, he is involved with the establishment in that he gives training to social workers and the police. And he also goes, I'm pretty sure he goes into prisons and works with paedophiles, and that does bother me. Because what I've also found out, and I'm not sure we're going to have Miss A on tonight about Dr. Hibbert, but I can talk about some of that, because what I have found out is that there are a lot of these witnesses, expert witnesses, psychiatrists, labelling parents as unfit. Now, I'm not saying that all parents caught up in the social services and the family injustices going on are survivors. But what is definitely happening is that if you are a survivor of abuse and they know it, they will target you and they will label you unfit, and they will have one of these experts on your case who will absolutely muller you psychologically during a session that may last half an hour or an hour. And I've had this done to me. Some of the parents, they don't even meet them, and they have completely destroyed them as a parent based on the fact that they were abused, and they found labels like narcissism, Munchausen's by proxy, which has largely stopped now only because we started shouting about it. Lots of labels, borderline personality disorder, whatever it is, but you might abuse your child in the future. Future harm of emotional abuse is often the label that gets children taken from parents. And because I know that they're using NLP, while they're working.
That's neurolinguistic programming.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Now, I missed this one by a long shot because in my therapy, my therapist helped me with NLP, and it did help me. And I used it again to get myself walking when I'd been told I'd never stand again. So it's a powerful tool, but it's like everything, how it's used and the intention behind it. So I completely missed it, and looking back, I can see that it was used on me. And the reason I missed it is because I thought it was a positive thing. So I didn't see it coming when it was used badly. But I've witnessed now many, many parents having this happen. And Miss A, which it's unfortunate she can't get on tonight, but maybe another time, because she's got so much to say. And when we look at this one expert, Dr. Hibbett, on her case, and you hear stories like he sent a young mother out in a car, and she had to pretend that her car broke down and she had a flat tyre. She had to do it when the child was hungry, so that the child would be screaming in the car, and she had to decide whether to fix her tyre or feed the child. But she was told under no circumstances to feed the child. Now, she ended up being labelled as an unfit mother. And I reckon no matter what she did, she would have been labelled as that. He set her up. So, but what is that about? This is a psychiatrist. This is somebody, he was paid £6,000 a week for each family he had on his books. He was on top of that paid £250 for every report he wrote. Now, surely that money, given the information that we were giving out in the early 90s about what it feels like to have been abused, the effect it has on us, how it affects our lives, how it's damaged our relationships, surely by now, a psychiatrist being paid £6,000 to look after a family, what couldn't they do to help that family, given what we know? And I know the power of NLP, for instance, when it's put to the right use. Why aren't they doing that instead? So this is how, as I've come back and I've sort of looked and found and uncovered what's going on now, and given the history I've talked about with the forced memory syndrome kicking in straight after 93, 94, 95, until we dispelled that myth, we're still catching up. It's as if we opened up and we told the world how awful child abuse can be and affect us all, and they've turned around and used that knowledge against us, and every tool that we found that could help us seems to also have been turned around on us. And none of that's really flourishing and growing as knowledge within the movement as I see it now today, looking at that rally where Robert Greene and Holly Gregg are the focus. It's all being channeled that way, and there's a huge picture here that's ignored, which only those that have been there, there's many of us, there are many sites, as I say, that are very solid, hundreds of thousands of members that don't even know that rally happened yesterday. And that upsets me, and that's why Wednesday I was starting to get very upset, feeling very guilty, because I could have promoted it amongst that network, but I'm feeling that I can't because of what I know is going on, and then I'm conflicted. And that's why I got hold of you on Wednesday, email.
Well done, Shiva. I recognise what you say, because this pattern that you're talking about appears in so many aspects of various bits of research that I'm involved with, and also various cases that I've gotten involved with, wishing to support and actually realising that perhaps there's more to it than meets the eye. But on that note, we're just going to go to break. When we come back, I'll obviously be going to Louise. I want to talk a little bit more about mind control. You mentioned some of the deprogramming you were involved with. And because it does seem that child abuse and mind control are inevitably going hand in hand. They just can't be separated. All right, everybody, and we are back for the second part of our show tonight, which focuses on the opinions and aspects being put forward by the victims and survivors of child abuse who are not being represented by the supposed people raising awareness about these issues. Now, for those of you who've just joined us, welcome to Freedom Central's weekly broadcast on Finding Voices Radio. And for those of you who were with us before the break, you will of course remember we were joined by Shiva and Louise, who have been talking to us about various aspects that they've observed through their dealings with various awareness campaigns around the victims and survivors movements. Now, Louise, you mentioned earlier on that obviously you've been involved in deprogramming someone who was being abused in social services and being programmed. And let's talk a little bit about this. Is there a great amount of programming being done by people in social services of people? Or are they like foster families who take these abused kids and who are trained to program these kids? What is your opinion?
Well, I only know the case that I came across and my experiences around that and what I saw around it. So in that, they used a foster carer, but the foster carer was part of the programming of the child, but also other people in the community were part of her programming. And then, but when it came to dealing with social services, say, who were her, like she was their care order, then they weren't. They were still. They must have been fully aware that she was being used for that, because their conduct was totally not what it was normally as social workers. So they were very obstructive. Like, I mean, I've worked in the drugs field for about 7 years, and I was very high profile in the fact that if I went into a social services meeting for a child to be returned to her mother, say, they would listen to me always. And yet in this case, it was like they didn't want to come nowhere near me. They didn't want to see. And when I did get to see them, the conduct of the workers was very not nasty and obstructive and rude and completely different setup, and an arrogance of that they could be so arrogant and rude and so forth. I mean, I went into it's a sinister side of social. It's not. They are social work. Well, some of them may not even be back. I went to a case conference. They wouldn't have a case conference. When I asked for the mother, when did you last see the child? She was meant to be in foster care. She said, oh, no, they won't arrange for it. And I said, where's the case conference, when she first came to me? And she said, no, they don't have case conferences. I said, no, they have to have case conferences. This is how it runs. So then after obstruction, I got to see the social worker, and I said, right, case conference. She, when's the case conference? And they were obstructive with that. And then I went to the chair of social services I previously worked for in play schemes. And so I went to him, and I said, they're not doing it properly. So he said, oh, leave it with me, I'll go and do it with it. But then he avoided me like the plague afterwards. But before that, after he went and dealt with it, all of a sudden they sent all the forms to the mother, all the proper forms for what would you like out of this case conference and dooby-dooby-doo. And we went to that, and everyone tried to behave normal, like they normally would in a normal case conference, except when we came in, one woman, it was an African woman, and she was really big and quite ugly and older. And the thing is, it doesn't matter if she was like that, but what happened is when we introduced ourselves, she introduced herself as someone who was a manager for one of the teams, the social services in that borough. But I'd previously met that manager at a drugs rehab, so when she said her name, which is a very distinct name, I was like, you're not her. I know her. She don't look like you, and she's like, looks like West Indian descent, she's slim, she's fit, she's young. You're not her. So I was like, you're not her. And then everyone in the room looked at me as if like, how dare you say that? And it was like, but I can't pretend that you're her, because you're not. And then she went, oh, I've changed my hair. I was just, oh, so I thought, say no more, because I'm trying to help my client here. But it's that, so it's like, well, she weren't her. And then from then on, she'd come to the case conferences and be, hello, Louise, remember me? Yeah. But it's like, so the social services and the system, the workers are, I feel, knowing what system they're working for and what agenda they're working for. Whether they take part in the programming, I don't know. Although what I do know is when we got the child back and the mother put her in the nursery, the local nursery, but then the paedophiles that used to abuse the child called themselves the daddies and told the child that she had to call them the daddies. So when she put her in the nursery, the child said the daddies were outside and used to say hello, but well, it was all, we didn't know, she'd just been returned and she was only 3 and so she wasn't eloquent with her speech. So anyway, she said loads of things happened at the nursery that she had to take her out of the nursery. They cut her hair and her nails, which was either to use for some sort of occult magic or was to make one triggered into thinking about occult magic, but that's what it's used for. But they denied it to her hair. I've lost my point now, but what was the question again, sorry?
Sorry, Louise, we were talking about programming, and let's get back onto the actual whole programming aspect. Is this going on? You said you only can talk from the experience of the case that you're involved with, but it seems like that there is a much deeper level, perhaps intelligence-based programming, subliminally or overtly, that is somehow intertwined with social services, from what you're saying.
Okay, then yes, because they're all part. See, when I deal with this case, I've never seen anything like it in my life. So I'd worked with one way, and then all of a sudden, the mother came to me as a drug user, asked for help, asked for her to get her child back, and then I witnessed all this obstruction and then strange behaviour. So it's like, what the hell is going on? I don't know this. So I spent years, and then that was to stop me. I believed it was all orchestrated to give me something to do so I wouldn't be running a drug service that was opposed to the way that they wanted drug services to run. So this was part of Shut Me Up campaign, in a sense. So they kept me out of the picture for 10 years. Now, in that, then through learning, it was, initially no one's come along and said, oh, that mind control going on there, the child was returned, she behaved very odd. And it was like, what the hell is going on here? All strange things, all gang stalking going on, and all different things happening that's like out of my perception of how the world ran. and so it was like making sense of it. And then in the end, I came across Mind Control, and it was like when I read Kathy O'Brien's book, and it was like, oh, this makes sense. This looks, because I was looking for answers. So it was like, oh, this makes sense. Well, then in that process, I applied it to the child and was like, right, I don't think you're doing this nastiness because you'd be nasty all of a sudden, and it'd be like, why? I don't know. She don't know, and it'd be like, what do you mean you don't know? You know why you do. Tell me the truth, and it'd be like, I don't know. So it's like, okay, you don't need to be nasty, la 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 la. Now with that, then I learned, oh, this is called generational stuff. This is generational abuse, and the way I understood it was government go to generational abuse in families, and then they say, well, we caught you in the act, we caught you doing what you're doing, you either let us use your children for government programming, or we deal with you all for being Nazis. So families buckled, that's how I understand it. So seeing that it was a generational thing, and to cause the disassociation, you need to have it genetically, a way of coping with trauma. So therefore, it's like, well, if you are programmed and you've got alters, then so must your mother. So then we looked at her mum, who was my partner by then, and was like, you've got to be programmed. So then we, with the sort of starting off with Kathy O'Brien's book, it was like, okay, you've got to write it out. And so we started trying to learn how to get into the program, and we managed to get in. And so once she got in, then the mother realised, oh yes, I've been used for an assassin for CIA and it's like, damn. And it got more and more extreme, but it was all real. It all added up, and I knew the mother well enough to know, no, she hasn't lost her marbles. Do you know what I mean? It all tallied. And then, I found the children, and that was when things went a bit pear-shaped. But
So sorry, this lady, obviously, sorry, Louise, can you just clarify? This lady, your former partner, had a child who had been controlled and programmed by the system, and herself had been mind controlled and programmed, and you actually managed to deprogram her.
Well, not totally like everything. Yes, we started the process of deprogramming the child and deprogramming the mother, and it achieved so far. But you can't be. I mean, you get these people on the internet. They make me laugh, and they're like, they say, "Oh yes, I was programmed, and now I'm fully." And it's like, you couldn't deprogram that fast. How can you? Do you know what I mean? It's extreme. It's like they do extreme tortures that you've got to face. And it's like you can only face so much. Do you know what I mean? A time, and you've got to recover from that. You're not meant to be able to face it at all. And it's like they do tons, so you can't deprogram in a couple of years. So it's like, yes, I spent from 2006, I think it was when I realised, oh right, there's mind control, and yes, the child wouldn't be programmed to begin with. She didn't like writing, so it's like, the way I've learned through Kathy O'Brien is you need to write it down. It was like, well, she won't write nothing down. Kathy was like, well, wait till she's in puberty, she might then. Do you know what I mean? But in the end, it was like she gradually was willing to. The mother obviously was like, of course I'll write it down if that's what I need to do to get free. But it was like, there's tons, there's years and years and years and years of it. It's like, it doesn't, you can't just go, right, I'll try and remember now, and I remember. It doesn't work like that,
Louise, so did this woman actually have children that she doesn't remember having because of her programming?
Yes.
And you found these kids?
Yes. She had the children in different altars, yeah? And then it was through deprogramming that she remembered seeing, she remembered seeing this child. She remembered being taken by this woman that says she's her mother, but she questions, is she her mother? So she says that she used to see this child in St. Lucia on a hill, and she really liked the child, and the mother would go, oh, you like that child, don't you? And she'd be like, yes, I do. And then in the end they stopped. You can't see her no more because you too like the child. Well, then it was through then she remembered something else, I can't remember, about a birth. And so then it was like, it all came to a point when I was like, maybe that child on the hill was yours. Do you know what I mean? So she was like, that's true, she looked like me, really. She looked like me, and she had a way, and she'd remembered her. So I started looking for that child, but then I found other children that she's a singer, the mother. So she had an album cover that was in black and white, and it had a certain facial expression on it. Anyway, through me being using ways to find the children, I narrowed it down, and I made friends with this woman in St. Lucia, and looked in her friends, and there was a picture of a guy, and the guy it was a black and white picture, and he was doing exactly the same pose, and he looked just like the mother. And she was just like, who's he? Friend him. And then it was like, oh, his surname was the same as her ex-boyfriend, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, this escalated that I started joining them all together and finding them all over the shop. But she didn't remember in a normal self, the person I knew didn't remember having all these children, and she had them really, really young. So she didn't, but it was like when she remembered the births in the end, then the births would be in a different order. Sometimes, like when they make mind control slaves, then they make different altars. And so some of the children that she gave birth to were in child altars, so they get the child altar to give birth. So it's really traumatic for the child altar to cope with having, and then it's not like they give birth and it's all nice and there you go, let's wipe the sweat from your brow. It's horrific the way they deliver the child. And so she remembered that. Then it was like she remembered pregnancies, and so it was like joining all the little pieces together, and worked out that she had a child nearly every year.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? From about age 10.
That is awful.
So and then I wasn't aware of other people, but since then I've learned, this is quite common amongst children from satanic ritual abuse families is to have children as young as they can. Some don't actually give birth, they have to kill them before they live, or like they could have them early, or there's all different stuff goes on, but it's common, but it's not really spoken about. And I know when I started saying online about it, then that's when lots of people from SRA come to me and went, wow, that's what I thought. I remember giving birth when I was really young, but I thought, no, that can't be true. It must be impossible, but you're saying that it is true. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yes, this is common. And so she was producing them children, really. Do you know what I mean? So, but this child, she was aware, the one that the social services had, she was aware she had her, but she had asked for them to care for the child because she was a crack user and wanted to sort her life out. So she was like, look after the child, because she was in a violent relationship with the partner and father, and wanted to get her own space from him. So she went homeless, so forth, to get the child back. But really, they were intent on taking that child anyway, and that became clear also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, it's like the system, the people in the system, within the system, that are all part of this whole packaging, if you got me, because it's not just like, oh, government does it in a very clinical way of programming. They do stuff in a clinical way, but they also do things, they're also in bringing satanic ritual abuse or just occult practices. It all interlinks because they're all from them sort of, it's all like they're from them sort of families. I think the social workers who do take part in all this nasty side of things are switching orders themselves. I think that because I've met social workers who I've known, I've worked with other clients of mine, and I've been like, oh, she's a really good social worker, yeah, she, and I see them pull their socks out and think of that and do the work properly. And then they'll come along when I'm dealing with this mother's case, and I'll be like, oh, good, we've got you as a social worker, but then they'd be a different character, and they'd have a different name, and then I'd point out, excuse me, but you call yourself so-and-so. Oh, yes, I changed my name. So it's like, I think they're MCs themselves.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
That's
and
interesting.
Therefore, it's like earlier you were saying, oh, why do people do all this abuse? And it is, when you look at how much abuse goes on, sexual abuse, it's like, well, sick, it's so sick. But I think, yes, the amount of the population that are involved in satanic ritual abuse, we've got no idea the size of, because people ain't aware that they're involved in it. Do you know what I mean? They're just in another altar. That's a whole, do you know what I mean? It's like, they don't know that that's what they're taking part of. I mean, the social workers that come and take the children, surely they do know what they're doing. I do sit there and do you realise you switch? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I believe they do. So, but I suppose it's so hard to believe, that they know what they're doing, because it's like, how can you be so sick? So you think, no, I want to let them off the hook.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, the world are, even more nastier. So...
But Louise, you've really seen quite a bit then. Shiva, just coming back to you, because I know we've left you hanging for a bit there. You've obviously a survivor yourself of some form of abuse. Mm-hmm. Now, you've come down this road and you've come to realise a few things. Give us your perspective. You've obviously heard what Louise has had to say about these matters. What do you think is really going on?
Oh, well, again, I can really only talk from my experience. And before I got onto being on Facebook and joining back in with the movement, I had a friend who was working as a Mackenzie friend, helping families caught up with social services. And I was just hearing stories from her about how these parents were being spoken to, how they were reacting, the things they were struggling with. And I said, these parents, were they abused? Because for me it was ringing bells because of my background. No, she said, no, I'm sure they would have told me. And I said, well, look, I tell you what, just tell them who's looking after your kids while you're helping them in court and being their Mackenzie friend, etc. Tell them that your mate that's got your kids right now used to run these rallies about child sexual abuse and see what happens. And every single one of them opened up to her then and said, actually, that happened to me. Now, then I got online, and at that point, baby Peter, had just recently been killed, and it was exploding. And again, we had these massive groups. There were hundreds of thousands of people watching baby Peter and demanding that social workers got more powers. And so I was going into those groups and saying, hang on a minute, they had the power. They had the knowledge. They knew he was suffering. They witnessed it, how he went through so many different stages and was seen so many times. They knew, and they did have the power to stop it. They don't need more power. But what is happening, what I'm seeing, there's a consistency of them ignoring and allowing these tragedies whilst picking up on families that actually are maybe in some kind of crisis. Maybe there are drink and drugs involved. Maybe there are some things that we might not approve of, but clearly they need some help and support, and maybe some workshops, and maybe some nurturing, and stuff like that, which these thousands of pounds that they spend on the experts that I was talking about earlier, I'm sure I would put that money to better use.
Yeah,
so,
indeed.
This is kind of how I came back into it. So I was talking to people like Erin that will appear on another show. She's just not well tonight. But in the early days, she even accused me at one point, I think, of being a social worker, because I was talking to all these groups and I was trying to get them to make sense of this. But I was also going into the family justice groups because I'd also by then been targeted by social services. And as that was happening, and as the meetings were happening, and as the social workers were talking to me, and it was unravelling me, I still at that point was strong enough to fall back on the tools I'd learned in therapy so that I could get my rage, because I promise you, they engage your rage. they have the way of hitting those buttons. And anyway, if somebody threatens your child, it will hit the primal rage button. On top of that, they stress you out, and I've seen it done purposely, because I got involved in some groups because they told me to. I was around a lot of parents, and I watched them purposely stress them to see what they'd do next. Now, I don't think that's the way to treat somebody in trauma. And previous to doing the rally, by then I'd trained in holistic massage, and I was working with survivors, introducing safe touch, counselling, running groups. And so we were so gentle with people and so aware of how to be with traumatised people. And this was the opposite. So this was why social services couldn't really get me, because I could throw things in their face. And in fact, the final time when the social worker was in my house, I put that rally video that has now been lost on my TV. And I put the sound down, but there was me up in Trafalgar Square talking about child sexual abuse in 93, 94, and the social worker didn't know. Now, why didn't she know? Was my point. But she said, what's that? What's going on there? And I said, that's this thing I did years ago. But from that point onwards, they backed off. They did it with, and I've got all the paperwork, and I will be revealing it because it's funny. It's really funny. Because they make sure they still make me look so bad and themselves look so good. But this is what happened. They knew that I was going to highlight them. Whatever they did next, they'd better watch out, because I was not going to be gagged. And so, I've got sort of many sides of this where I've been through it, I've witnessed it, and as they were doing this work on me, and it was working. I'd be coming home enraged, but as I say, I had the tools that I could release it, pull myself back together, meditate, get calm, you know, get in touch with what was going to be the best. But I just thought, goodness, do they know what they're doing? They can't know what they're doing. And all of the things that, I mean, Louise, it's almost like we're trying to still puzzle it all out, because this is how it gets you. You get confused. You think, they can't possibly know that they're doing this to us. Surely not. But they do. I've come to the conclusion that they absolutely do. And I don't mean the social workers on the ground. I think they are puppets. They've been trained. They've been trained in certain ways of using NLP, but it's all for punitive reasons. It's to catch the parent out. You watch out where her eyes move to see if she's lying. You know, well, when you've got a parent that may have got into some kind of bother and suddenly social services are around, and you know that you've got to protect your child from them, you might lie. You know, you might. It's not inhumane to think that. So, but they're coming in with this punitive thing. And I often used to say in the groups, you get more information when your car is taken, because they've suddenly got your child and you know nothing. You don't know where to go. Nowadays, it's quite recent, they have started to give people lists of solicitors, but all of the solicitors that they give you work for them as well. They work both sides. You know, a family court solicitor one day will be in court for the local authority, and the next day will be in court for a parent. That, for me, is conflict of interest. And obviously, who's paying the most money? And who's the most solid source of money? It's the local authority, because parents will come and go, legal aid will come and go. It's not a sure footing for a business, but that part of their business is sure. And I've even noticed that. I had a solicitor on my case 3 or 4 years ago who the social services were terrified of this woman, absolutely terrified. I only had to mention that I might phone her and they would do whatever I wanted. When it came back around onto me another time, same solicitor is now playing and dancing to their tune. Same person, but she's now dancing to their tune. So I still manage to unravel them and win and all the rest of it, because I know how to. And that's now that I'm safe to, because my son's safe. I need to teach people that you can unravel these people, and we have to know what they're doing. But yes, they're using these powerful tools, and I don't think some of them know what they're doing. It's like putting a kid on the motorway with a radio-controlled car. They don't know what they're doing, but they're using it anyway, and it's having the effect of undoing parents. The other thing I've witnessed is their vindictiveness, and the amount of effort and money they will put into chasing a parent down that has won, should win, has got their child back, or escaped, or even protected their child. I know of a woman who escaped to Canada because their father was a paedophile, and it's very clear, and there's lots of evidence here, and there are other people that can bring that possibly to you. But all I can say is British social services invested in chasing that mother down all the way to Canada, all the money that would have cost to bring her back and crucify her. And that's one case of many. And these are the kind of cases that are not being spoken about, because Holly Greig, in my view, is a false flag and taking up the whole arena. That's just one. I know so many people. There's a family right now where they escaped to Spain to have their baby. The baby was born in Spain. The Tim Yeo, the speech I've put on the playlist we've got, he's speaking about this case. Now, they have their child safely, but there's no work there. Those parents now are refugees because it's been made clear to them that even though they went through 8 months of passing Spain's tests and allowed to have their child, the minute they step foot back in this country, they will take the child. It's up for adoption immediately, and they will be gagged and nobody will hear about it if the British justice system as it is has its way. So that, the mother's ill, the father's working and trying to keep hold and take care of his family, but they're refugees. They can't come back and be, at funerals. There have been deaths in their family and they can't engage properly. That's wrong. We're not hearing about this because these other cases that have been overtaken into this was one case, this massive Holly Gregg thing. It's overshadowed everybody, and there are so many cases that I know that are just as revealing of skullduggery. For instance, the one I'm talking about where the mother escaped to Canada, the prosecutor on that case, once they started getting some heavyweight help, the prosecutor was found hung off a bridge in the Freemason way. Have you ever heard of it?
No, tell us about this.
Yeah, well, why not? Why not? Because I've been shut up by the current organisers. There's so many people. I'm having to sort of hedge a bit and be careful because some of these people are still in danger, and I can't reveal all. But there are heavyweights that can back me up, that may be able to. I don't know, but these are the kind of people I can put into this now and bring into talking to you. And if we do this right now, and leave out the rubbish and leave out the ones. It's almost like the tubes have got blocked up of that freedom flow that I tried to create originally, came back to try and recreate. It's all got blocked up again, and news is not flowing of all of these cases, and it all needs airing. And there's so much of it, and that's what's horrifying. But if we can engage people to look at the big picture, and you see the patterns and they're global, you have to know that yes, there is this structure at the top. There's got to be decisions being made that is manipulating and organising this, but I'm not sure everybody on the ground knows that they're being manipulated.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm not.
Yeah, well, a lot of mind control is covert. I mean, we program so much through television and music that I'm sure people can flip into altars without even knowing that it's going on.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope I'm making sense because we're kind of going all over the place. But
No, it's good. It's good information.
This is where we are. We're puzzling around. Well, how is this happening that we're still not managing to really get the whole picture out there after all this time? And so we're all kind of puzzling it out now. And I know that Louise has got different threads to this than I have because she's got different experiences, and that's all helpful to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've just witnessed so many parents saying the same things, that there's this manipulation going on. And I was in a group once, and there were 2 parents there, 2 mothers. one of them desperately was begging them to give her respite. Please, just take my kids away for a couple of weeks. I need a break. And she was begging them. No. On the other hand, they were insisting that the mother across the other side of the room did let them take her kids for a few weeks. She didn't want them to. She begged them not to. Yes, we are going to take your kids for respite because you need it, in our opinion. And you over there don't. That's what we say. That's what we think. We don't care what you think. And this is the whole thing with the parents when you're up against the social services, is that you suddenly are nothing. You're not listened to. Your rights are taken away. And one of the things that people don't realise is that the lowest level that they can write on a report to get you onto a register is emotional abuse. There's nothing less that they can say to get you onto this register. And a lot of the time they're convincing parents that you need to be on this register because when you're on the register we can get funding and get you help. And a lot of parents then say, oh okay, I'll let you call me an emotional abuser and then I'll get some help. And they don't get the help, they get abused and programmed and sabotaged and manipulated, and by now they don't know what they're doing, and suddenly they realise they might need a solicitor, and by then it's often too late. They're too far down the road, and they're often swept down it. And people don't know this, they don't understand, because by then if you're labelled, you want to register, you must have done something, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So you get the stigma, you get the shame, you get the, and particularly for survivors of abuse, all of those labels and techniques are going to really start to unravel somebody.
Yeah. All right, ladies, we're coming towards the last sort of 20 minutes of the show. I think we've covered a lot of ground there. I wanted to ask Louise if there's anything else that you wanted to add.
I can't actually think of anything off the top of my head. I think we've covered it. I did notice, and I haven't said, but yeah, I agree with Shiva. She's saying how the things that we use to raise awareness are then used against us in our campaign. So you show there's a need, and then they fix it by setting a law in place to trap you even more. Yeah. So yes, I'm familiar with that pattern too. And how anything that we're doing creative is used against us. And so it's like a sort of paradox we're stuck in, of do you let them find the ways, but you have to find the ways. To a certain extent, I think even the case that I took on, it's like we won and everyone else doesn't win. So it was like, how did we win? How did we revoke a care order? And even though we did do it through sheer hard work and wit, and the thing is, I had to work through like a little rack with a million little puzzles to work out how to beat them, how to get the child back, how to get social services off of her mother's back. And it's like I can guess now that all the loopholes that I found, and I always find loopholes, it's as if I'm programmed to find them, I bet you every loophole I found they've now filled in. And so it's like, yes, you feel that I'm aware of what she's saying, and I say, yes, it's very much used by them. So it's like, yes, show us the way you're going to do it, and then you won't be doing it that way anymore. So that's what I'm aware of, yes.
There's a lot of manipulation going on there. It's really just, it's so obvious.
Because the thing is, I know their belief system is, from a Masonic point of view, is they see it as, look, energy's in the world, and energy can be used for good or bad. And it's no good using someone with good energy and trying to say, like me, I've got good energy, so it's no good trying to get me to do bad, because you're not going to get very far. But if you can use my energy that I use for good, for your benefit, then albeit it's like I specialised, I've worked in crack, and when I worked with crack users for the system, I was given everything I needed to become as knowledgeable as I could on the topic, and everything was provided. And for a long while I was asked to write the book on how to get off, and I never did, so they squashed me and I wasn't able to work anymore. And then I felt, no, I need to write a book for the users. And the day that I said I was ready for publishing, that's when they destroyed my whole life and stole the book. And so you think, well, why do they want a book on how to get off crack? And it's like, they don't want the world to have it because you can't find it that easy online, but they've got it because I believe then they can take everything of my knowledge that I've given from my heart up to the users and they can reverse it, and therefore they know how to keep someone on crack. So yes, there's that element that is used to manipulate from all angles. It's like they control all angles. Like yesterday, I think at the rally, I saw written somewhere the EDL or something. I'm not very good, but there's some fighting for British and anti-Muslim rubbish, right? But you know that they're funding behind it, and you know they're funding behind the rally yesterday, and they put them on at the same day, so they'll conflict. And it's like, no, it's all manipulation. Do you know what I mean? And they have to infiltrate every service, whether it's for good or for bad. They need to infiltrate to be in control. And when I set up my service for drug users, I wouldn't allow them to infiltrate, which is why they tried with money. They tried to offer me volunteers. I refused everything. So then that's when they sent me the mother that was mind controlled, obviously, and the case of return the child, and it was like fight like anything to get the child back, which I had to give up my whole career and everything to win that case. And of course I had to choose, do I care for the child or my career? So it was like, well, I better, follow my heart. So I helped the child. But it's like, it's all as if they utilise me in a sense to watch and learn where I'd find the loophole. And I found them all, but I bet you they're not there now.
Yeah, absolutely. Shiva, anything you would like to add before we close off?
Just one thing. Recently, Mother has been described by her psychiatrist, expert witness, as an nymphomaniac.
A what, sorry?
An nymphomaniac.
Oh, yes, okay.
Okay. Now, in fact, in some ways, we have similar histories. My psychiatric expert witness described me as a prudish woman who probably didn't like certain aspects of, and I won't go into detail, but he went into detail. In my court report, what's that got to do with parenting? Anyway, but we, over the coming weeks, we'll be able to get some more of this together and out there in a more concrete way. But
so tactics they use. Yeah. Interesting stuff, ladies. I think it's been quite an intense show. We're going to end it there for tonight, and I just want to say to both of you, thank you very much for being brave enough to come forward and speak about this. And we will talk more. And obviously, we hope to encourage more victims and survivors with stories. Particularly, I'm interested in hearing about anything to do with regards to cultic, satanic ritual abuse, or for that matter, obvious examples of where the system has failed, as you guys have been discussing this evening, because this is something to me that is needs to be exposed, particularly when you've got supposed people trying to help us, like the Holly Gregg movement. And really, it's not doing us any benefit, and it quite provably is. I've gone through all the information. It's a hoax. It's not. There's just too many things. There's too many things that cannot be overlooked in that case, and that is the reality. And for anybody out there who's still doubting it, we have done a full report on the Holly Gregg case and the hoax that it is. You're welcome to check out that interview on our website. But it's been mentioned quite a few times tonight, and it's important that you guys understand exactly the implications of this particular case, because it has usurped the attention and the energy from so many people all around the world, whilst good people have had their cases ignored. And I think on that note, ladies, I'm going to thank you both very much for joining us tonight, and we will speak to you both again very soon.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
All right, Louise, Shiva, take care. Have a good evening. I'll speak to you both soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.